125 years ago, this month, Lady Gregory and W.B. Yeats, Edward Martin, and a whole other host of celebrities were in Killeeneen for the opening of a headstone to honour Reafteari the Poet. And Lady Gregory and Douglas Hyde did amazing work in saving the poetry and the songs of Raiftearai, because basically he was dead over 40 years when Douglas Hyde, the first president of Ireland, and Lady Gregory came to this area and all around South Galway to collect the poetry, and it was still being sung and spoken, recited around the area, which was an amazing feature, that it was all this poetry and song. It was oral. It was not written down. When we think of Raiftearai, we have to remember what a name he is, and because of him probably, and associated with Calvin's. But Raiftearai was known in that time all around Ireland. And how was that? Because sometimes at fairs people gave out manuscripts or sold manuscripts with the songs of Raiftearai. And Douglas Hyde first heard Raiftearai's Killeeneen being sung here by an old man sitting outside his house near Raiftearai. And he was a hunting man, and that's what brought him to the area. But a number of years later, he happened to be in Dublin. And he was just passing on the street, and he heard a man singing a Raiftearai song. And it clicked to him then. This was the same Raiftearai. And that's how, in some ways, it began. And Lady Gregory did great work in going around to the workhouses, to the people, stonemasons, getting the poetry wherever she could find it. It was an absolute terrible tragedy at the time. Young and old were drowned. And Raiftearai was a fella of the fella and public, and he represented and he captured the sadness. So I think, Michal, you're going to start with Anna. It really captures tragedy and the sadness of the people And the words are really beautiful. Ma'amsha sláinte, if I live, if my health lets me to live by conscious tractor, but there will be I'll always talk. On mage do baho, the number the drowned as on a hoon. Is mo hrua amara, is my sadness tomorrow. Got ahar is poor, but I got father and mother. Ben is posh, girl and child. A scuba or shoe. They were absolutely scuba or shoe. They were drowned. They were blown away. It's really it's in Gaelic. Thanks, Tashi Bahal and their father.
Raiftearai was born just in 1779, and smallpox basically, in the case of Raiftearai, it causes him to be blind. We're not sure if he was partially sighted, but they say the last sight that Raiftearai, the last thing he saw with his full sight was his 8 siblings laid out, dead. So Raiftearai had a very difficult start in life, and he worked for a local landlord called Raiftearai, and he played music and he sang songs. And the story goes that one night he was bringing the horse on a journey, going to pick up an errand, and he might have been going too fast, and he killed the horse. And he basically, there's a suggestion that that's why he fell out with his owner, Frank Taff, his landlord's eye, and he left the area. But a big reason that he came towards South Galway and East Galway was that he found, as he came south, the people were very Republican, more Republican, and keeping in his thinking about the need to fight for Irish independence. And that pleased him a lot. And that's why, in a way, he settled in this area. He never actually returned to Mayo. But just to say, just one other little thing, he died in 1835, about 10 or 11 years before the famine. He died of cholera, and he was on his way from Galway. He had been imprisoned by the authorities for composing songs against basically the colonisation and indeed the foreign church, as he called it, which he saw as being outsiders coming into Ireland and taking over Ireland. So he died on his way walking to Crockwell in Cloonan's house in Lough, and he had cholera, which was a terribly dangerous disease at the time.
Oh, Father, the hope that can iron matration, mar an iron and green, no, but a scapping and cure. No, that's William, the care, no, gallant, his jet, that's Scandi, no, Erplani, Leo. Killeeneen and Balya, Asun, Dagny, Santa Smeda, so craven, this massive and sword. So fine in Shasel, he got Darmaglina, till Jimoin and Yishim is Janina Lijo.
Because every spring when February comes, I think of Killeeneen, and Reaftearai, here comes the spring. Reaftearai, Tan Laudul Conchino, the day is getting longer. Reaftearai, the Lord, is Thuration of Fail Bridge, and after St. Bridget's Day, or Doi Memo Hiol. Some say it's his Hiol, his sail, some say it's his music. But he's that love, and then he goes on to praise Mayo inordinately, and the plants and the beautiful things that are all available in Mayo. And somebody said, maybe this is all, a lot of folklore went on among them, talked about Raiftearai. Still, people have some folklore, memories of what they heard from the parents. But the story goes that Killeeneen was written about County Mayo by Raiftearai because there was an argument between him and somebody, a poet from Galway. And Raiftearai said, we'll compete so on, whoever has the best poem about our area.
So Reaftearai writes the poem Killeeneen, and of course the Galway man says, well, blast you, Reaftearai, anyway. You have covered everything, you have praised it in ardently. I have nothing I can add about Galway. And he handed over the competition to him, the win. But it is one of the great, beautiful songs, and I think everybody loves that song.
Dolce master les solis machri fan agus tasche go Jeremy Lee Fechnish me is ma fool le balle ik shin kol go fochi alle then music for empty pockets.
Yeah,
I don't want them was it. Yes. Was it the Galway people or the old people who were touching
Mr. Reaftearai on Fella. It was actually composed or put together by a man called Sean O'Kelly from Loughrea, and they say it might have been from things that Reaftearai was saying or a folklore about him, but he initially put the song. And as we know, Reaftearai was so big, so important that was learned by every child practically in primary school in the past. Maybe my time and before it, and it was so important that they put the first 4 lines of that poem on the £5 note. I don't know, does anyone remember that? Yeah. It was on the 3rd edition, I believe, of the £5 note. But I know it was. We were very proud of it at the time.
Eng down de van joik, skoboking heen to go do. The grua mar rose is minish and tender to gnoos. Snifata verbium of os and farelo. Ser falde al do, falde al day. Falde al do, falde al day. Falde al do, falde al day. Falli, fallo, falde al day. Noir rach in ride, rabit Killeeneen folk. Is stolen the line to go hide the sing on the creek out field the merachok. Sis millish en chri en hele gaan zich jooi. Ser falde al do, falde al rei. Falde al do, falde al day. Falde al do, falde al day. Falli, fallo, falde al day. Sta meisjes mo graag hoor der var het leef. We're born fall, though the begin. Shachni, shachla, though if we knew the name. Snor women walk nach moire, sit till them rave. Ser falde al do, falde al day. Falde al do, falde al day. Falde al do, falde al day. Falli, fallo, falde al day. Fair play.
Douglas Hyde, the first president of Ireland, born in Roscommon, the son of a Church of Ireland rector. And
he basically heard the Irish, like in similar way to Lady Gregory, he heard one of the servants speaking Irish all the time. And that's how he developed the love, because his family wouldn't have spoken it, and Roscommon Irish wouldn't have been as strong, obviously, as in further west. And he went on. His father wanted him to be a vicar, but he went to Trinity, and instead he did humanities. He could speak 5 different languages. He was an amazing man, Douglas Hyde. And he was brought out of retirement, basically, to become President of Ireland. When in the late 1800s, the Irish language enthusiasts were trying to promote the language. They had a battle, ní raibh sé éasca, mar bhí alán daoine tábhachtach I gcoinne an Gaeilge. Agus tá sé den ish, ach he got a lectureship in Trinity College, and one of the characters that was very opposed to him at the time was a lecturer in Trinity, Mahaffey, who basically said, and a lot believed it, Irish language had no literature, it had no civilization. It wasn't written down, and this is where Lady Gregory was collecting it to show it had. And basically, this Mahaffey said Raiftearai was an uneducated peasant. He hadn't ever gone to a formal school, and Douglas Hyde basically defends the Irish language. And we're just going to get a little bit from a play by Christopher O'Flynn, in which Peter Dolan. Peadar O'Dolan, do you want to come up, Peter? Peter is going to just give that little recitation from Douglas Hyde, where he's saying, why is the Irish language important?
His response to Mr. Mahaffey saying he was uneducated. Uneducated, then how is he able, in describing a boxing match, to refer meaningfully to Cuchulainn, Hector, Hannibal, and Achilles, as well as Alexander's Pope translation of Homer, and a humorous poem entitled Bonus on Staple Moor, or Blind Poet compares a mock heroic battle between rival factions of beggars to the Battle of Clontarf, the siege of Troy, and the destruction of Tara. Blind, yes, as was Homer, unable to read or write, and he laments this handicap in several poems, but hardly uneducated, even in the narrow academic sense. That's it.
Raiftearai is believed to have attended hedge schools, and that was one of the ways he picked up his education. And it was incredible for a man partially sighted or blind to become so informed. Because in some of these poems, in the poem about Shannakish Nishgeha, 300 lines, what basically happens in the poem is poor Raiftearai is out walking, as he was, trudging County Galway, and he gets an awful shower of rain, very heavy rain, and he stands under a blackthorn tree to try and get a bit of shelter. And basically, he ends up really, really wet anyway. And he comes back the following day and he basically curses the tree, the blackthorn tree, for not providing him shelter. And what does the tree do? It speaks back to him. And it tells him how long he's been here. And he's been basically saying, this tree, I've been here since time of Noah and the flood. And he brings him through the whole history of Ireland, right down to the siege of Limerick, goes through all that, and it is quite remarkable the education and the information and knowledge he had. So somebody like Raiftearai, when he would go to houses, when he recite poems, he was educating people as well and informing them, as well as sometimes inciting them to either pay Catholic rent or maybe other times to go and fight physically against imperialism.
Yeats is amazed and writes in one of his poems, W.B. Yeats' The Tower, how could a man that was blind be able to praise the beautiful women? So I think he was only partially blind. But the story of Mary Hines, a Mara ní Hain, as Gortin Shigura, Law 1, Tarisha and Afrin, Vishik Chakdawalya, Aus Vulshil Raiftearai. Raiftearai met her coming from Mass. And of course, as a poet, you can dream all you like, but according to Raiftearai anyway, she invited him back for a drink to the house. And so he continues in his mode of love poetry. But not everybody wanted a poem about them, and some people feared that if a poem was written about them, it might bring them bad luck. There was that anyway, folklore that went out. Poor Mary Hines didn't live a long life, but that's not to say that the poem, of course, had anything to do with it. But he wrote a number of love poems like Maureen Vasey and so forth, and a lot of those are still sung in Connemara. And sometimes being me geistach le radio geista clushin me dini ag kana Auron Raiftearai.
For a lady of her time, she could be talking about today as well. So we've adopted what Christopher O'Flynn imagined her saying to Yeats, just slightly, and just maybe in the context of what's happening in our world today, it's probably just as relevant. So she is speaking, and she's saying, this morning, Yeats and I were speaking of the tragedy of Anglo-Irish relations. I was trying to imagine all the Irishmen who have been executed since the Normans began the oppression of the Irish people. I understand that Yeats is planning an epic poem on this subject. Perhaps before he has finished it, he will have new names to add. O God of mercy and justice, why must nations make war on others? How many innocent people have died by war, famine, and pestilence, because others have come to take their land by force, or to make those people their servants? How many more will die, even in these our own times, before conquerors and their minions will acknowledge the injustice they have done? And how can they even begin to make restitution for the depredation and the recurring calamities that they have caused? My husband and I have often cause to wonder at the keen sense of justice that these people have in their own country, and how it seems to be submerged by other emotions when they begin to speak of countries like Ireland, of the Irish, of India, Egypt, or South Africa, or other nations. When I have heard Maud Gonne speaking with such passion about Ireland's freedom, I have almost wanted to join the volunteers myself.
Oh, the Bonan we at Mar broke out on a drinking bout, might as well have drank. His bones lie torn on a naked stone, where he lived all alone, like a hermit monk. Oh, the Bonanbui, I pity your lads, though they say that the sod, like myself, is cursed. I was sober for a while, but I will drink and be wise, for I fear I may die in the end of thirst. It's not for the common bird that I mourn, the blackbird, the corncrake, or the throat crane, but the Bonanbui that is shy and apart and drinks from the marsh by the long bog drain. If I had known you were near your death, while my breath held out, I'd have run to thee, till a splash in the marsh of the song of the birds your soul would have brought to a life new. My darling told me to drink no more, or my life would be over in a little while. But it's the taste of the whiskey that gives me health and strength, and will lengthen my road for many a mile. You could see how the Lord on the long tall neck, he would get his death in the end of thirst. So come, son of my soul, and fill your glass, for you'll get no more sup when your time is past.
what a wonderful night of music we have been gifted tonight. And the tradition of Irish music playing in pubs and people being able to avail of the great musicians at close quarters. We really should be very appreciative in this country. This doesn't go on in other countries, and I really appreciate the time you've given tonight, Mike, Michal and Éanna, and Finola coming from Kibara, and of course Honor, and our two very good, I won't know what to call them, actors or reciters, Maura Lyons and Peter. So just say, maybe you could put your hands together. The whole Raiftearai story will go on, and please God, there's a development going on in Raiftearai to conserve the graveyard, and Tom Connell and another group are doing work there in terms of, but we have got the grant now for it, so it's going to be improving, and the story of Raiftearai is going to be, hopefully, we'll be able to put it out more.